Here's the continuation of the lesson called Creating Structure for Your Data. I'll pick up where we left off in the previous movie. Here in Workfile 7, we can explore the process of creating connections between tables to give meaning to the new structure of the database. Creating tables in Workfile 6 was an important first step, but until the tables are joined in some way, they aren't going to be of much use. By the way, if you want to open Workfile 6 to have a look at the work in progress up to this point, you'll find it provided as one of the accompanying files with this lesson. In Workfile 7, when I open the Manage Database dialog, you can see that all of the tables now have the fields added to them in the same way that you've already seen me do for the authors table. So in quotations, for example, we have a header field, a serial number field, a quotation ID field, and then several data fields. And it's the same story in each table in turn. The assignments table has a header field, serial number field, assignment ID field, and then data fields. In the join tables, in addition to the basic fields, header, serial number, and ID field, there are ID fields to make the connections between two other tables. And in the case of the author publication join table, there's also a data field to store the role, that is, the role that a given author is taking in relation to a particular publication. Let's pay a visit to the Relationships tab now and see what's happening there. You can now see that FileMaker has automatically added a box on the relationships graph for each new table in the file, and within each box we can see the fields listed, starting with the header field and then all of the other fields in each table. You can also see that the two original tables in this file, the Publications table, which was originally called the Books table, and the Publishers table, are already joined with the relationship that we added in a previous lesson. You can also see that as I click on the tables, I can select them. And in fact, if I click and drag a table, I can move it to a new position in the relationships graph. It's also worth noting at this point that if I hover over the little arrow at the left, FileMaker pops up a little window which tells me some extra detail about the table. Its source table in the Tables tab, where the data is coming from, and whether file access protection is enabled. Along the top of the box is the name for this particular box. Now the name by default is the name of the table that the box is associated with. But as you'll see, we can change the name of these boxes so that they no longer match the tables to which the boxes point. Also, at the right of each box, you can see a little icon that's actually a control for the size of the box. One click will collapse the box down to show only the header bar and any fields that are being used as connecting fields. Another click collapses the box still further to show only the header bar. And then a third click restores the box to its full size. So 3 clicks rotates you through the 3 states of the box. It's also useful to know that when you hover the mouse pointer over the edge of a box, you can click and drag to resize the box. And the same thing works vertically as well as horizontally and diagonally. So here on the relationships graph, you have the tools to control the size, position, and state of each of the boxes representing tables in the solution. Now, I've been referring to these objects on the Relationships tab as boxes, but a more common name for them is table occurrences. That is to say, each of them is one occurrence, or if you like, instance, of the data table it represents on the graph. One of the implications of that is that there can be more than one occurrence of a particular table, so the term table occurrence is used to reflect that. I'll talk more about that later on, but for the moment I should mention that the name table occurrence, being unwieldy, is sometimes abbreviated to just table for short, even though the objects on the graph aren't actual tables, just non-unique representations of them. Also, you'll hear the name abbreviated to 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 avoid confusion between tables and table occurrences. So now that I've shown you around the relationships graph a little, the next step is to build some connections to the new tables I've added to the file. First of all, I'm going to move a few things around and make a few adjustments to give us some room to work. I'll shrink a couple of these boxes a little and move the Publications table occurrence over into the middle so that I can now make a connection between the Publication ID field in Publications and the Publication ID field in Quotations. So each quotation will indicate in the Publication ID field in the Quotations table which publication it comes from. Next, I'll move these 3 tables at the top across towards the left to give us a bit more room to work. I'll shrink the quotations table horizontally a little. Next, I'd like to make a more complex join involving 3 tables. I'll place the assignment quotation join table in between the quotation and assignments table. Those are the 2 tables it's designed to connect. First of all, I'll connect the assignment quotation join to the quotations table by matching the quotation ID field in both those tables. And then I'll match the assignment ID between the assignment quotation join table and the assignment ID field in the assignments table. So now we have a connection between quotations and assignments that passes through the assignment quotation join table. So each record in the assignment quotation join table will indicate a connection between one quotation and an assignment in which that quotation has been used. Before I continue on, I'll make the relationships graph a little larger so we have a bit more room to maneuver, and I'll also toggle the state of several of these tables down a little so they're more compact. And I'd like to move these across before I make the next move so that I can now make another 3-table connection to join publications and authors via the author publication join table. First of all, publication ID will connect the author publication join table to the publications table, and then author ID will make the connection in the other direction to the authors table. I'm just repositioning these tables so that we can see all of the joins and make sense of what's happening here. At this point, all of the main tables of the system are connected. We still don't have any connections to either the system or the notes tables, but everything else is starting to look like it flows, and each table now has its position in the data structure. The notes table will actually have a number of uses in the system, but at this point I'd like to connect it to the assignments table by dragging a link between the reference ID and the assignment ID, so that the notes table can be used to store a note about each assignment. The system table presently isn't being used. It doesn't have anything other than a header field, so it's there for future use. I'm simply positioning it out of the way at the bottom of the graph for the moment. Now I'll move these across to the left and make the relationships graph, or rather the managed database dialog, a more reasonable size, and we're done. At this point, I've created the joins that will allow data in each table to connect or relate to corresponding data in other tables in the system. This provides us with a framework for relationship-based data management. In other words, a relational database.